Okay, good afternoon, sixth graders. We're going to start our next writing unit, which is sixth grade poetry unit. And it's kind of crazy trying to do this unit with you all not here because I love having the interaction with you that really can't happen right now. But poetry is an amazing way to write. It is using the most with few words. It's like more with less, getting your point across using fewer words. And in fact, a lot of the regular writing rules don't apply to poetry. It's different. And so we're going to look at a lot of different ways to write poetry and make this a really awesome opportunity for all of us. All right, so let's look at a few. You're going to want to take some notes, so get some paper so that you can take some notes on this. And we're going to start. I'm going to tell you exactly what is going to be required of you for this unit. You are going to write 4 different kinds of poems, and I'm going to go over those with you so that you are feeling comfortable about doing that. And I want to see by, not next Monday, but the following Monday, April 27th, I want to see a rough draft of those poems that you're going to write. Now, probably the best way to do this is Google Docs, or it's got to be typed. So you could also, if you wanted to just send the file to me through email, that's okay too, in a Word document. So however you want to send it to me, that's fine. One of your poems must be about Easter, and the other one, don't tell your mom, has to be about your mom. One of them has to be about your mom. One of them has to be about Easter. And then the other 2 can be about whatever you want them to be. So that's the first thing. Now, let's just talk about poetry in general for a second. And I want to go over what poetry is and what poetry isn't necessarily. And we'll look at this together. So it's enjoyable. Once you get the hang of it, it's really a great way, a creative way to express things about whatever it is that you want to express about. Maybe you want to do a poem about the quarantine or the coronavirus. I mean, it's an opportunity for you to kind of give your thoughts in a concrete way about different topics. And so you're going to want to use something that you are interested in, or something that you have knowledge about. This isn't a research paper, it's not a short story, it's poetry. And so, when you think about poetry, a song, all a song is usually, or a rap, is poetry that's been put to music. Also, other examples of poetry are in the Bible. You've got the Psalms are all poetry. You've got the Song of Songs, which is also poetry. Proverbs is really poetry. So David, who wrote some of these books, was a poet, and he didn't even know it. No, he did know it. He knew it. He was a poet. So there are form poems that we're going to use that are going to help you to be able to get the hang of writing poetry. And so those are some of the things, and you're going to want to use expressive and colorful words. You're going to want to use one word that can describe something rather than a sentence to describe something. So we'll get to that. Now, what isn't poetry? Well, it isn't always rhyming. It isn't hard to accomplish if you kind of have, especially some of these form poems that you can use. It's not dull or boring. And if it is dull or boring, then you have not produced poetry, because poetry is interesting, and it's colorful, and it's creative. So that's what we're going to be looking for. And it's not something to fear. You can do this. You guys are going to be able to do this just like all the other classes have done it before, and it's not necessarily Dr. Seuss. Now, one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish, I'm sure you're all familiar with it. It is Dr. Seuss, but it doesn't have to be exactly like Dr. Seuss. We are not Dr. Seuss. So what we are going to look at poetry. We're going to enjoy the writing of poetry, and we're going to kind of get the hang of it. That's the goal here. So here are a few guidelines that you're going to want to use as you're writing your poetry. You want to use strong descriptive words, and thesaurus is really, really helpful. Now, if you have a word, there are ways to use the thesaurus by highlighting the word that you're thinking of, and then going to the drop-down menu, and one of the options is thesaurus. And so it's going to give you an option to look up words that you might want to replace good with, because good is not a 6th grade quality word in our regular writing. It certainly isn't a quality 6th grade level word for our poetry, because we want our words to be very descriptive. All right, so you're going to pick topics that you enjoy. You're going to show 10 in your work. Each poem must be at least 6 lines long, and each line must have 6 words in them. You're also going to have a title for every poem that you write. Now, anytime that you want to, and I'm going too fast and you want to stop the tape so you can write these things down, feel free. I don't want to stop the tape because then I have to upload 2 instead of just 1. So if you need to stop, stop whenever you need to. All right, so we're going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different forms of poems. So what you need to do is you can write these different kinds of poems down, and then I'm going to describe what they are. And then you get to choose which of them that you want to use. So there's 10 of them. I'm going to describe each one. And then you get to choose which ones you want to use for your poetry. So the first one is a color poem. And a color poem has 6 to 8 lines, and it's describing a particular color. Each line starts with that color. So I'm going to read an example of a poem that is about the color yellow, and the title of the poem is Yellow. Here's an example. Like I said, it was a 2nd grader who wrote this poem. So don't be too critical of this student's work. Yellow is bright. Yellow is light. Yellow glows in the dark. Yellow likes to lark. I don't know what that is, but that's what it says. Yellow is an autumn tree. Yellow is giving to you and me. So that was a 2nd grader who wrote that color poem. So there's an example for you of a color poem written by a 2nd grader. All right, next one, 5 senses poem. Now, 5 senses poem is a poem that incorporates all of the 5 senses. So feel, taste, see, smell, hear, or sound. And then, because you need 6 lines, you need to have a concluding line. So you're going to start with the senses, or I suppose you could start, you can have your 6th line at the beginning or at the end, and then you have your 5 lines of the senses. Each line usually begins with the topic and then describes that topic using one of the senses. So you need 6 lines, 1 sentence for each one of the senses, and then either a closing or an intro line. All right, so here's an example of a 5 senses poem that is done by a 7th grader, and it's about winter. So here's an example of a 5 senses poem, Winter. Winter is my favorite season of the year. Winter smells like chimney smoke. Winter tastes like ice on my tongue. Winter looks like heaven with all the white. Winter feels like a deep freeze on my feet. Winter sounds like a howling wolf. There you have it, winter. And that was done by a seventh grader, winter. Okay, so kind of getting the idea of this. Oh, you know, I have another book here I forgot to show you. Shel Silverstein is probably a poet that you guys know, kind of like Dr. Seuss. This book is A Giraffe and a Half. And this was one of the ones I got out of the library. There's a lot of Shel Silverstein in the library. You guys have probably read his things. Where the Sidewalk Ends is one of his poetry books. So anyway, all right, so that's the second kind. We got color poem, we got a 5 senses poem, and what I want you to do with your family or in collaboration with somebody that you get on the phone with and talk to them about, I want you each to do a 5 senses poem about baseball. And think about all of the different things and all of the different ways that our senses are activated by being at a baseball game or watching a baseball game. So you feel free to look at how you want to do that with your family and just send it to me sometime. I'd love to see it, and it doesn't have to be typed. You can just write it. You can perform it if you want with your family. All right, so baseball, 5 senses poem. All right, and for this video, this is the last one that we're going to cover, and it's a limerick. Now, a limerick has 5 lines. It's one of the only poems that you're going to get away with just having 5 lines. Now, you could do a limerick that has, it has groups of 5 lines, so you could do a limerick with 10 lines, but the basic format is 5 lines. And what happens is line 1 and line 2 rhyme, line 3 and line 4 rhyme, and then line 5 is the same rhyme as 1 and 2. And you guys are familiar with limericks, I'm sure. But here's an example of a limerick. There once was a boy named Rick. He thought he could do a trick. He jumped in the sky and he flew very high and landed right on his friend Nick. So there you have it, a limerick. Lines, and there's a rhythm to a limerick. Line 1 and line 2 rhyme, Rick, trick. Line 3 and 4 rhyme, sky, high. And then the last line, line 5, rhymes with line 1 and 2, Rick, trick, Nick. And somebody was a limerick, I don't remember who it was, for our name game thing that we did. All right, so I'm going to stop there for this particular video. Make sure that you have the notes on all of this, and the next video will be the second half of this. So that's a good start for us. Thank you for watching.